Hi, my name's Carl, and I'm going to be talking about the Kosciusko neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri. This red arrow indicates the location of the neighborhood within the city. This neighborhood is currently mostly non-residential, but it has a lot of history. Located just south of downtown, it became part of a growing St. Louis city early on in the city's history. I've highlighted the neighborhood in red in this aerial map from 1896. You can tell that already by this time the neighborhood was quite developed as a riverfront industrial hub. This is an illustrated aerial map from 1875 that zooms in on one area of the neighborhood, and we're going to look at a couple of the businesses here. So this area in the bottom left corner of the screen that I've highlighted in red was called the St. Louis Gas Works Company. And this is just an example of a business that used to be around and powered the city with heat and light for decades and just does not exist as a business type anymore. So I'm going to zoom in here. And it's a bit of a rabbit hole, but I think it's fascinating to just look closer at these types of businesses that used to be in the city because they tell you so much about what life used to be like and what things used to be happening. So this gasworks plant is a coal-burning gasworks plant. Those two large cylinders in the center are holding coal. It had to be close to a river or rail to feed lots of coal into the plant, and it produced coal gas, which was a very polluting industry, but it helped heat and light the city in its early days. Next to that coal gas plant was a stockyard, which I'll also zoom in on here. So this was called the Southern Stockyard, and the way it would have operated is by getting shipments of livestock by rail from places like Kansas City and even further west where you had ranchers. And they would have kept the livestock in pens and slaughtered it into dressed beef, mostly for the local population here in St. Louis. Here's another neighborhood landmark that still exists today called Lyon Park, right there in the center of the page. It was named after Union Brigadier General Nathaniel Lyon. It was created in 1868, so this is just post-Civil War. They're naming all sorts of parks and monuments after Civil War generals who fought for the Union. And then page south of that, that grouping of buildings, is the St. Louis Arsenal, which was instrumental to supplying Union soldiers with armaments during the Civil War. And that arsenal currently is the site of the Geospatial Intelligence Agency. What's amazing about these maps from 1875 is that they show the huge density and variety of uses that existed in Kosciusko at the time. You had iron works, cotton compressing companies, flour mills, factories of all sorts, and those are just the industrial uses. Intermixed with all of that were the schools, churches, and houses that made up the fabric of these communities. I've highlighted in red two landmarks that you could still find today, although technically they're in the Soulard neighborhood, and the one on the right, which is Soulard Market, has been replaced by a new building, although the church on the left is original. Here's a close-up of the Soulard Market. These buildings were built originally in the 1830s and 40s. Here's the market today. In the same place was built this Renaissance-style building from 1929. And here's a close-up of the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, which is a German Catholic church built in 1874, just a year before this pictorial map of St. Louis was made. Here is the church as it stands today, still very much intact and still very active in the community. So it's great to see that there's some structures in this area that survived the urban renewal of the 1950s and 60s. And that brings us to the next phase of this neighborhood. Here is the same area as in that map today. You can see that most of the old buildings are gone and have been replaced by modern warehouses or parking lots. In 1947, the city of St. Louis published a comprehensive plan that called for bringing the city's land use and zoning codes up to then modern standards. This plan called for the demolition and rebuilding of several large older sections of the city, including most of the Soulard and Kosciusko neighborhoods. This map shows the Kosciusko district in relation to Soulard and downtown St. Louis. You can see here that basically the entire area called the Kosciusko industrial area was slated for demolition. So what is the Kosciusko neighborhood today? I don't want this to only be a doom and gloom story about the destruction of a historic neighborhood, although that is mostly what this is about. There are still several landmarks and interesting things that you will find if you visit the Kosciusko neighborhood today. One of those things is the mile-long graffiti wall that extends from just south of the St. Louis Arch grounds, further south over a mile through the Kosciusko neighborhood. And, it's a lot of random graffiti, but it also has a lot of really interesting artworks. This is not a polished tourist destination, you might say. You will see some trash and raunchy graffiti, but it is an interesting, authentic, unique St. Louis place. And that concludes this video on the Kosciusko neighborhood. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I hope that you will fight against future plans of demolition of historic spaces in your city. Thank you.